I'm Kirk Naumann, and today ain't your daddy's episode. Wait, it is, because today on Fully Loaded, we're celebrating Father's Day. You can always take your dad out to a nice dinner, or you can treat him even better with Pit Boss in your backyard. So stay tuned on this episode of Fully Loaded. Have you ever wondered how to get the most out of your Pit Boss? Welcome to Fully Loaded, where I teach you how to unlock the full potential of your Pit Boss grill. Learn new recipes and pick up strategies to cook full meals. Load those grills to the max and unleash flavor like never before with expert tips and tricks. Pit Boss Fully Loaded is your ultimate grilling guide. Today on Fully Loaded, we're going to be showcasing our 700 FB1 unit. Although this unit is compacted as a tank, this is a fantastic unit for all the dads out there. It's affordable and it comes with all the standard features that you love about Pit Boss. Today we're going to be preparing 3 different recipes on our Pit Boss today. First, we're going to start by setting our grill to 350 degrees. We're going to start with a strawberry chocolate chip cookie cobbler, and then we're going to move right into a steak entree and also a steak sub sandwich. Before we get started, I'm going to set our Pit Boss to 350 degrees and we're going to move right into our first recipe. First recipe we're going to start with today was going to be a strawberry and chocolate chip cookie cobbler. Sounds a little different, but this thing is really tasty and it's super easy to make. And so what we have here is that I chopped up 2 pounds of seasonal strawberries. Right now they're just about in peak season. We're going to add about 1/3 of a cup of sugar. We're going to hit it with a tablespoon of cornstarch and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We're just going to mix that together like so, just so it gets all nice and incorporated. It is going to look a little dry in the beginning, but when we start the bake process, this liquid is going to come out of the strawberries and it's going to thicken because of the cornstarch that we added, and it'll be nice and syrupy because of the sugar that we've added. It's about the consistency you're looking for here. We're going to move right into our pan. Just going to layer that out nice and even as possible. Give it a nice little shake. If you don't want to use one of your nice baking dishes, and the half-size aluminum pan that you can get from the grocery store will work just as well in this application. So once we have that, now we're going to fire it on our Pit Boss. We are preheated at 350 degrees, and we're going to start our bake for about 20 minutes. Another thing I would like to mention when it comes to baking cookies in general, normally the rule of thumb is that you want your cookie dough to be cold as possible, if not close to being frozen. Today we're going to be breaking the rules. We're going to let this cookie dough come to room temperature. So the purpose why we're letting the cookie dough come to room temperature is so when we put it on top of our custard, we're going to want it to flow out, just like how you would if you put a streusel on top of your cobbler. So without further ado, we're just going to wait for our strawberries to cook. Once we get to a midpoint, I'll show you what the consistency should be, and then we're going to move right into putting our cookie dough on top of it to finish the bake. All right, guys, we're right at about our 15-minute point. About halfway through, I'm going to remove our strawberries from the grill. We're going to give it a nice stir, and we're going to top it with our 1 pound of chocolate chip cookie dough. And then we're going to place it back on the grill, and we're going to bake for an additional 20 minutes until the cookie is nice and colored on the top. As you can see, the liquid is starting to come out of the fruit, and the fruit is starting to cook through, and it looks syrupy and delicious, just like what we're looking for. We'll give it a nice little once-over stir, and then we're going to top it with our room temperature cookie dough. All we're gonna do is just take some nice little pinches, and we're just gonna place it on the top evenly. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is 1 pound of cookie dough. Keep in mind, if you would like more cookie on top of your cobbler, feel free to add a little bit more, but I think this has a very nice balance and it's not too sweet. kind of came up with this idea once. I was in a pinch for a family gathering, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to make a streusel, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it with cookie dough. And lo and behold, sometimes the last minute things on the fly come out the best. That's exactly what we're looking for, folks. Have that, and then we're gonna pop it right back on the grill for an additional 20 minutes or until your cookies is golden brown and baked through. Right back in. Now that our timer's gone off for 20 minutes, we're ready to pull off our strawberry and chocolate chip cookie cobbler. Let's have a look. Oh my goodness. Look at this. Now we're just gonna let it set off to the side, come down to room temperature, and then we're gonna move right into serving it with a little bit of whipped cream on top, and that should be a dessert fit for the king. All right, now it's time to move on back to our strawberry and chocolate chip cookie cobbler. It's time to serve that up, and so we're gonna give him a nice healthy portion on our plate. We're gonna garnish with a little bit of fresh whipped cream. Oh yeah. And there you have it, the dessert for the king. Time to move into our next recipe. This entree, we're gonna be making a dry aged 40-ounce porterhouse steak from our friends over at Lynn's. You can easily find this steak at shoplyns.com if you would like to replicate this recipe, but any steak that you can get from your local grocery store or butcher, you can definitely do that if you'd like. So first we're gonna start with our charred tomato compote, and so we're gonna be doing charred tomatoes with red onion. We're gonna season that and mix it with a little bit of avocado oil. This is gonna be the topping for our steak, along with balsamic glaze and broken basil and some smoked sea salt. So starting first, we're gonna put our tomatoes on and let these char up, and we'll let those rest, and we'll get right into cooking our steak. I had preheated the grill. We went on a high level, and we're gonna open up our sear plate, and we're gonna be charring our onion and tomato. We're gonna move that off to the side and let it carry over, and then we're gonna move right into searing our steak and cooking that to temperature. So we opened up our frame broiler using the handle provided for our sear plate. Easily can be slid open and closed. Now that our sear plate is open, we have open flame. We're gonna char our vegetables, and once they get a nice char, we're gonna take that off and let it carry over cook. While our charred tomato compote is working, I'm gonna unpackage our steak, and we're gonna rub it with a little bit of avocado oil and some salt and pepper before we start the grill. So we're just gonna open that up like so. Look at that. Is that a steak fit for a king of the house? Look at this thing. Gonna coat it with some avocado oil. You can use olive oil or canola if you like. I prefer like using avocado oil because of its high heat resistance, and it doesn't burn under high heat. So a little bit goes a long way. We're just gonna get it nice and rubbed off a little bit. Season with a little bit of salt and pepper. Got that. We're going to set this off to the side and let that rest. We're going to check our vegetables that we have roasting. Oh yeah, there we go. So essentially what you're looking for is that your skin is going to be charred. The tomato is still somewhat firm in the very center, but we can go ahead and pull this off, and we're going to set it off to the side. Let the tomatoes carry over, and we're simply just going to chop it with a knife, season it with a little bit of salt and pepper, and that'll be the topping to our porterhouse steak today. Now with the frame broiler still being open, we're going to place our steak and we're going to get some color on it. Good God, that thing is massive. So what we're trying to achieve in this, we're going to flame broil it until we can get the color that we desire. Then we're going to move it off to the side and place our heat probe in it. And we're going to bring it up to about 120 degrees internal before we remove it from the grill and allow it to rest. Going to baste with a little bit of avocado oil. There's no real method to the madness. We're just rotating our steak so we can get a nice even color on both sides of the steak. Now that we have achieved the color that I'm looking for on the steak, what I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna place our temperature probe within our steak to let it cook to our desired temperature. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna stick it in the thick part of the steak without touching the bone. It's about what we're looking for here. Now we can put it on the cooler side of the grill, and then we're gonna close our sear plate and move into our next part of the recipe. All right, so for our charred tomato, now that we let it rest, tomatoes are pretty soft all the way through and it's cool enough to handle with our hands. We're gonna put this on the chopping board and we're just gonna give it a nice rough chop, and this will be our condiment for our steak this evening. Just a rough chop, doesn't have to be really fine. Now that we have achieved that, we're gonna put this right back in the bowl. We're gonna season it right on up and let it sit on the side until we're ready to build our plate. Probably about a teaspoon of salt or half teaspoon of salt. We're just gonna season that up. Just a touch of avocado oil. A nice little once over. This is what you're looking for. All right, we're right at 119 degrees on our steak. We're gonna remove the probe and we're gonna allow it to sit in this pan for about 15-20 minutes so it carries over to a nice medium rare, and we can move right into our next recipe. Our porterhouse is nice and rested. First thing we're gonna do is that I'm gonna put our naan bread that is garlic flavor. I'm gonna pop it on our grill that's been turned off. We're just gonna allow the residual heat inside of the grill to warm this bread through. We don't really want it too crispy, but we also don't want it at room temperature either. All right, gonna have a unique presentation to this steak today. What I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna carve it off the bone on both sides, and then we're gonna slice a steak, and then we're gonna reassemble it on the plate, and we're gonna garnish it like so. So normally what I like to do is find where your top of your bone is, and then you just carve on down like so. This is the fillet side of our porterhouse. As you can see, that came out really nice. And we're just gonna follow on the opposite side of the bone as close as possible. Carve it all the way down to where you can. Whenever the bone stops you, you just gotta kind of carve around it like so. There we go. Have it look at that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just simply going to place this bone right on our plate, and it's going to be used as part of our presentation. All I'm going to do now is that I'm simply just going to go through and slice and place it back on the bone. Look at that, folks. That's how you want that right there. Same thing with the New York. We're going to take our charred tomato compote, which we made earlier. Give that a nice healthy scoop right here on the plate. It can be used as a condiment to eat with your toasted naan bread. We have that like so. A little bit of balsamic glaze right over the top. A little bit of cracked pepper. And some smoked sea salt. For our naan bread. Just gonna cut it into 8s. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just gonna place that on the plate like so. Last but not least, we're gonna take some fresh basil, and this is gonna finish this masterpiece off. Have to be anything perfect. Probably about 8 or 10 leaves is about what you're going to want. I'm just going to rough slice this. Don't need the stem. And there you have it, folks. Steak fit for a king. All right, now we're gonna move into our next recipe of today's episode. We also, from our friends at Lynn's, we have gotten a cut called the Tres Majors. Terrace Majors is another way people like to pronounce it. This is normally found right under the chuck in the bottom of the cow. No one really knows about this. If you don't really want to buy the Terrace Major from Lynn's, you can easily use a flat iron steak or an outside skirt steak for this application. So I'm right at about just under 2 pounds of this cut. We're going to be making a sub sandwich with this steak today with some grilled mushrooms, onion, chimichurri aioli, and chimichurri. We will have recipes available for you at the bottom of this video. All right, so first, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna oil and salt and pepper my mushrooms and get those on the grill. Mushrooms can be very porous, and so you don't want to put too much oil on it. Even though it looks like it's dry, it's really not. Once the heat starts to transfer into your mushroom, it will start to shrink, and you'll hear it start to cook. But the salt, pepper, both sides. And we're gonna go right onto the grill. Now that our mushrooms are cooking, we're gonna open up our steaks, get these seasoned as well, and we're gonna start the grill process on these steaks as well. This is a very tender cut, and so keep in mind when you watch me slice this later when we're building our sandwich, if you do decide to use a flat iron or an outside skirt steak, you might want to consider slicing your steak a little bit thinner because this steak is quite a bit more tender. Now that we're at this point, I'm gonna flip our mushrooms and get those out of the way, open up our sear plate, and we're gonna open flame grill these Terrace Majors. Notice I'm not using a temperature probe. This is a thin cut of steak. This is something that I'm just gonna do a few moments on each side, and I'm gonna allow for a rest. You can cook your steak as far as you want. I'm gonna be aiming from a medium rare to a medium temperature for this particular application. But again, if you like something more well done, let's just grill it a little bit longer. Keep in mind, between these two recipes that we're doing for entree, this can easily be something that's a lunch or a brunch type item, or you can wait till a later evening to have with your steak, or as a sandwich for your entree. You can eat it with a multitude of different things, whether you want to grill vegetables on the Pit Boss, or you can have something as simple as a bag of chips with it. But this sandwich is going to be over the top delicious. We have our Chimichurri Aioli that we're going to be using as a spread. Not only that, we're also going to be dressing our steak with fresh chimichurri. Keep in mind the simplicity of this recipe. You can easily make this sandwich. Don't be overwhelmed by it. You're going to be grilling your steak to temperature. And you know what? If you remove the steak and you slice into it and you want to cook it a little longer, you can always go right back to the grill. This is something that you can easily break your brand new Pit Boss in with. As you can see, our grilled mushrooms are just about done, so we're going to remove those from the grill and allow these to cool. Set them right there. Alright, we're going to remove our steaks. We're going to allow them to rest on our cutting board for a few moments. In the meantime, we can turn our grill off It does have a shutdown mode to it, and the residuals heat inside of here is going to allow us to warm our loaf of bread for this sandwich. I'm not really looking to toast the bread. I just want it to be nice and warm throughout, so it has a nice, soft, crunchy texture around the outside when you bite into it. So I'm going to close my sear plate, and I'm going to turn the grill off. Your choice of bread, I simply just went to a local grocery store and we got a fresh baked Italian roll. This is soft by the touch. And all I'm gonna do is simply just place it on the grill and allow it to warm. No real science to it. We're gonna close it and allow the residual heat to heat our loaf of bread. While our steaks are resting, I'm just gonna let them sit like so, and I'm going to top them with a little bit of this chimichurri. The recipe for this chimichurri is going to yield about 3.5 cups. What I did is I took 1 cup of our fresh made chimichurri and mixed it with 1 cup of mayonnaise. That's what we're going to use for the spread of our bread, and we're just going to let this rest on the steak like so. Alright, it's been about 10 minutes that we had let our steak rest, so I'm just going to move these off to the side. We're going to clean up our cutting board, and we're going to cut open our loaf of bread, and we're going to move forward on the assembly of this awesome sandwich to be. So as you can see, loaf of bread, nice and soft, warm, slightly crispy on the outside. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to split it down the center like so. Right. Now that we're at this point, do a nice healthy dose of this Chimichurri Aioli that we mixed up. And do the same on the top half. Just like so. Now I'm just going to move our loaf of bread up to the top of this cutting board. We're going to slice our steak and we're going to build our sandwich in layers. So on a bias cut, I'm going to slice it relatively thin. We're right at our medium temperature. Notice that I'm cutting the steak at a bias. You can cut it straight if you would like to. But when I cut on a bias when I'm building a sandwich, I find it to layer on the sandwich and stay in a lot better. So essentially, I'll layer that on there just like so. Cut our second little small piece. Look at that, folks. Always like to clean as I go, so I'm just gonna wipe right after I slice this steak. Now, all we gotta do is that we're gonna slice our mushroom like so. There we go. Build up like so. You can use as much or a little mushroom as you'd like. I really think that mushroom tastes really good with chimichurri. If you decide to leave it out, it is a-okay. I'm gonna go with a little bit of roasted red pepper. A little bit of shaved red onion, fresh. A little bit of fresh arugula. Arugula has a nice peppery flavor. I think this also goes well with the flavor of chimichurri. You can leave the lettuce out or use a shaved iceberg or romaine lettuce if you'd like. But again, I think the peppery flavor of arugula goes really well with this chimichurri. Stacked high. Go in for the assembly, soft press. There we have it. We got our steak sandwich. All right, here we go. Now it's time to cut our sandwich. I'm gonna cut it into 4 equal portions and we're gonna stagger it on our board. Then we can go serve the king. So, look at that, folks. There you have it, folks. Dress Major steak sandwich. Happy Father's Day, folks. This is another episode of Fully Loaded in the books, all cooked off of our 700 FB1. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment below for what you'd like to see in future episodes. See you next time.